Imagine this for a moment. A young maid stands frozen in a silent hallway, her trembling hands holding a dusty envelope that could change everything. Inside lies a secret that could destroy a powerful family, or save her from a life of silence. What would you do if you found something the world wasn't meant to see? Before we find out what happens to her, tell me, where are you watching from? Drop your city in the comments below, and don't forget to like this video and subscribe, because this story is one you'll remember. It began in the grand estate of a billionaire whose name carried weight across the country. His mansion was a world of glass and gold, where every room whispered wealth and every smile hid competition. Servants moved quietly through the polished halls, afraid to leave a single speck of dust behind. Among them was Maya, a young maid who never raised her voice, never complained, and never asked for more than she was given. To the family she was invisible, another uniform, another face that bowed when they passed. But what none of them knew was that Maya would soon become the only person standing between them and a truth they had buried deep. The day began like any other. Morning light filtered through tall windows. The scent of expensive perfume hung in the air, and the house buzzed with muted tension. The billionaire had passed away just weeks earlier, and his heirs were already circling like hawks. Every conversation was about money, power, or control. Maya kept her head down, polishing silver and dusting portraits, pretending not to hear their arguments echoing from room to room. She had learned long ago that silence was the safest armor. Until that day, when silence was no longer an option. She had been cleaning the old study, a room few dared to enter since the patriarch's death. The air was heavy, untouched. As she wiped the shelves, her hand brushed against the edge of a frame that seemed slightly off balance. Behind it, a small crack in the wooden wall caught her eye. Something was hidden there. With hesitant fingers, she pulled the panel open just enough to see a corner of yellowed paper tucked inside. Her heart began to race. It was an envelope, old, sealed, and marked with the billionaire's own handwriting. She read the faint words scrawled across it. To be opened only in truth. Maya's breath caught. She knew she shouldn't touch it, but something inside her whispered that she must. She slipped it into her pocket, intending to hand it over immediately to someone in charge. But when she finally gathered the courage to speak, no one listened. The eldest son was the first she approached, his tone dripping with impatience. A secret envelope? From father. Don't be ridiculous, he said with a sneer. You probably imagined it. When she insisted, his voice hardened. Maya, don't overstep. You're here to clean, not to meddle in family matters. She tried again with the daughter, a woman wrapped in silk and superiority. Sweetheart, the daughter laughed coldly. I think you've been watching too many mystery shows. The laughter echoed like a slap. Even the other maids began to whisper behind her back. Why would she make up something like that? One said. Maybe she's trying to get attention, another replied. A few warned her in hushed tones. You don't want to get involved in that family's business. People who do don't last long here. Maya's world, once quiet and steady, began to tremble. Every glance felt sharper, every whisper louder. She couldn't sleep that night. The image of the envelope haunted her, the bold signature, the strange phrase. Could it really be a will? And if so, why was it hidden? Her thoughts spun like a storm. Maybe the billionaire had changed his mind about who should inherit. Maybe he had left everything to charity. Or maybe he had left something for someone like her. The next morning, she watched the family gather for breakfast, their laughter brittle, their smiles false. They spoke of investments and luxury vacations while the air between them grew colder by the minute. Maya felt a strange ache in her chest. These people had everything, yet not a shred of trust or warmth among them. And there she was, clutching the truth they refused to see. Later that day, while dusting the same study, she heard two of the heirs speaking near the doorway. Father was always too trusting, one said. If anyone found out about the changes he was planning. The sentence cut off as the door creaked. They noticed Maya and instantly fell silent, their eyes narrowing. She forced a polite smile and excused herself, but her hands trembled as she left the room. Now she knew something was wrong. Terribly wrong. The envelope wasn't just a curiosity. It was a threat to someone. And the more she tried to do the right thing, the more dangerous it became. That evening, Maya stood by her small window, the envelope lying on her dresser under the faint glow of a lamp. She had kept it hidden after everyone's rejection, unsure of who to trust. Every instinct told her to burn it, to pretend she never found it. But her conscience wouldn't let her. There was one person in the mansion who might believe her, the house manager, Mr. Lawrence. He had always treated her with quiet respect, unlike the others. He had been loyal to the billionaire for decades, running the estate with fairness and dignity. If anyone knew what to do, it was him. Still, fear clawed at her chest. What if even he thought she was lying? What if he told the heirs? Maya pressed the envelope to her heart, whispering to herself, "If it's the truth, it deserves to be seen." She took a deep breath and decided, tomorrow she would speak to Mr. Lawrence. No more silence, no more fear. She would face whatever came next. Because sometimes even the quietest voices carry the loudest truths. And as the night deepened around her, Maya didn't know that her discovery had already been noticed. That eyes in the shadows were watching her every move. Maya stood in the quiet corridor, the secret envelope hidden safely in her pocket. Her hands trembled, but not from fear, rather from the weight of truth pressing against her chest. She knew what she had found could change everything, but she also knew that one wrong step could destroy her. The morning sun slipped through the grand windows of the Lawrence estate, casting long streaks of gold across the marble floor. The house was already awake, full of voices and footsteps, but Maya walked with quiet purpose toward the one person she could trust, the estate manager, Mr. Alden. He was a calm man in his 50s, with steady eyes and a voice that never rose above reason. When she knocked softly on his office door, he looked up from his desk with a faint, polite smile. "Maya, is something wrong?" She hesitated before pulling out the envelope and placing it gently on his desk. "Sir, I found this while cleaning the attic. It was hidden behind a wooden beam. I think it might be important." Alden adjusted his glasses and studied the envelope. It was yellowed, sealed with wax, and bore the unmistakable initials of the late Mr. Lawrence. His brows furrowed. "You're certain where you found it?" She nodded. "Yes, sir. It was wrapped in an old cloth tucked deep inside the wall. I didn't open it." For a moment, silence filled the room. Alden's expression shifted between disbelief and concern. "You did the right thing by bringing it to me," he said finally. "But Maya, if this is what I think it is, there could be serious consequences." She met his gaze steadily. "I understand, sir, but I couldn't just ignore it." Alden sighed, pressing his fingers against the seal. "We'll have to verify what this is before involving anyone else. Do you trust me?" "Completely," she replied. That afternoon, as Alden quietly examined the envelope, word began to spread. In a house that thrived on gossip, secrets never stayed secret for long. By evening, Clara and Ethan Lawrence had already heard that the maid had found something, and that she had gone straight to the manager with it. Clara's voice cut through the dining hall like a blade. "Unbelievable. She probably thinks she stumbled upon a treasure map." Ethan chuckled, swirling his wine. "Or maybe she's trying to make herself important. You know how some people love attention." Their mother, Mrs. Whitmore, frowned. "This could be dangerous. The staff must not meddle in family matters." "Mother," Clara said sharply, "you should have seen how she looked this morning, like she'd had just uncovered the crown jewels." Laughter rippled around the table. The conversation carried through the hallways, reaching every ear. By the next morning, Maya could feel the stares. The other maids whispered when she passed. One of the cooks muttered, "Always thought she was too quiet. Guess she had a plan all along." Maya tried to ignore it. She had no plan except to do what was right. When she returned to Alden's office, he looked tired but focused. "I've compared the handwriting," he said. It matches Mr. Lawrence's. This, Maya, this is a will. Her heart skipped a beat. A will? Yes, Alden confirmed, his tone grave. And not just any version. This one is dated 2 months after the one the family presented to the court. It changes everything. It divides the inheritance differently and adds a large donation to a children's foundation. Maya's breath caught in her throat. So the one they used was outdated, Alden finished quietly, perhaps intentionally hidden. He leaned back, watching her reaction. If this is revealed, it will cause chaos. People will question motives, money, loyalty. And truth, Maya whispered. They'll question that too. Alden nodded slowly. We can't go to the authorities yet. We'll need to present this carefully. I suggest we gather the family tomorrow and show them together. That way there's no misunderstanding. She hesitated. Do you think they'll believe us? He gave a faint, sad smile. No. But the truth doesn't depend on belief. Later that evening, the tension inside the mansion thickened. Clara confronted Maya in the hallway, her voice dripping with contempt. You've been busy, haven't you? Poking around where you don't belong? Maya met her eyes but said nothing. Clara stepped closer. You think you can play detective? You think anyone will believe a maid over this family? Ethan appeared behind his sister, smirking. She probably forged something, or found an old grocery list and decided to make a story out of it. Laughter again, sharp and cruel. I didn't forge anything, Maya said quietly. Then prove it, Clara snapped. Show everyone. Let's see this magical envelope of yours. Maya turned away. You'll see it soon enough. That night, as the house fell silent, Maya sat alone in her small room under the stairs. The air felt heavy with dread. She thought of her mother's words long ago, how truth had a way of shining even in dark rooms. But what if this truth burned brighter than she could bear? The next morning, Alden entered the dining room carrying a simple brown folder. The family was already gathered, curiosity and suspicion blending into one uneasy silence. Maya stood behind him, hands clasped tightly. Alden's voice was calm, but firm. Ladies and gentlemen, before you are the contents of a sealed document found yesterday by one of our staff members, Miss Maya. I have verified its authenticity to the best of my ability. Ethan laughed under his breath. Authenticity. How quaint. Alden ignored him. He broke the seal and unfolded the papers. This document is a revised will from the late Mr. Lawrence, dated March 12th, 2 months after the version currently recognized by the court. Murmurs filled the room. Clara leaned forward, her eyes narrowing. And what exactly does it say? Alden began to read, his voice unwavering. The words changed the air in the room like a sudden storm. The inheritance, once split among the heirs, was now partially redirected toward charity, millions that would no longer fill their accounts. Ethan shot to his feet. This is absurd. That's not his signature. This is a setup. Alden's voice stayed level. The handwriting matches perfectly, and the seal is genuine. Clara's voice trembled. Where did you find this? Maya finally spoke. In the attic, behind the wooden beam. Mrs. Whitmore's eyes widened. The attic? She whispered. Your father never allowed anyone there. Ethan glared. Convenient, isn't it? The maid just happens to stumble upon a secret will. How stupid do you think we are? Enough, Alden said sharply. Miss Maya came forward with honesty. You do well to remember that. Honesty? Clara repeated bitterly. She's trying to destroy us. No, Alden replied, his tone cutting through the noise. She's trying to do what your father asked. He left this for a reason. The siblings exchanged tense glances. The once golden air of the dining room now felt icy. Every word carried the weight of suspicion and fear. Maya stood still, her heart pounding, knowing that the truth was now beyond her control. Alden folded the will carefully and looked at the family. Tomorrow morning this will be reviewed officially. You all deserve to hear it together. He turned slightly toward Maya. his voice softer. Until then, I suggest we all reflect on what it means to honor a man's final words. The silence that followed was deep and trembling. As Maya stepped back, the whispers began again, sharper this time, venomous and fearful. She knew they would come after her now, that she had crossed an invisible line. But there was no turning back. The truth was already awake, and it would not go back to sleep. The heavy doors of the grand living room closed behind them with a muted echo. Every member of the Lawrence family was there, Clara, Ethan, and Mrs. Whitmore, seated across the long polished table under the crystal chandelier. Servants and staff stood quietly along the walls, their eyes filled with curiosity and unease. In the center of the room, Mr. Alden placed the brown folder on the table, his expression calm but grave. "Thank you all for coming," he said, his voice steady, carrying a weight that silenced even the whispers. "We are here to read the document found by Miss Maya, a document that has now been confirmed as the late Mr. Lawrence's final will." The air thickened instantly. Ethan leaned forward, his tone sharp. "You can't be serious. This farce again?" Alden didn't flinch. "I'm quite serious, Mr. Lawrence. What we hold here was written and signed after the last will recognized by the court. It reflects your father's true final intentions." Maya stood quietly behind him, her hands clasped in front of her, the morning light from the tall windows outlining her in soft gold. She didn't speak. She didn't need to. Alden opened the folder and began to read. His voice was calm, unwavering, and each word landed like a stone dropped into still water. The room listened as he spoke of generosity, of humility, of the desire to use wealth for the good of others. And then came the revelation. The majority of the estate was to be divided not solely among the heirs, but significantly directed toward charity, the foundation Mr. Lawrence had created in secret. A gasp spread through the room. Clara's hand flew to her mouth. "That can't be real," she whispered. Ethan rose abruptly, anger flashing in his eyes. "He would never do that. My father knew this family was built on his name." Alden looked up slowly. He also knew it would fall apart without his values. Silence fell again, sharp and deep. Clara's voice trembled as she spoke. "And what about us? Are we supposed to be grateful for nothing?" Alden placed the papers gently on the table. "You've been left more than enough to live with comfort, but your father wanted to remind you. Wealth means nothing if it blinds you to what truly matters." Maya's gaze lifted slightly. For the first time, the siblings met her eyes, and in them they saw no triumph, no gloating, only quiet strength. The same woman they had mocked now stood as the one who had carried truth through their deceit. Mrs. Whitmore rose slowly, her face pale. "So, all this time it was real," she murmured. "And she was right." Her voice cracked. "We accused her of lies." Ethan turned to Alden, his voice harsh, desperate. "You expect us to just accept this? Based on her word?" Alden's tone stayed calm. "Not her word, his signature, his will, his truth." He paused. "But you should be grateful for her honesty. Without it, your father's final wishes would have remained buried forever." The words hung heavy in the air. Slowly, the truth began to sink in. The arrogance that had filled the room now melted into silence, shame and disbelief. The guests and staff watched as the proud heirs of the Lawrence name struggled to find their words. Clara looked down, her hands trembling. We treated her terribly." Maya said nothing. Her silence spoke louder than any rebuke could. Alden closed the folder and stepped aside. "Ladies and gentlemen," he said, his tone softer now, "truth has a way of revealing itself no matter how deeply it's hidden. What matters most is how we choose to face it." He turned slightly toward Maya, and Miss Maya faced it with grace when others would have chosen fear. She honored the man who trusted her, even when the world doubted her. The staff bowed their heads subtly. Even those who had whispered against her now stood still, their faces heavy with quiet respect. Maya inhaled slowly, feeling the weight that had sat on her chest for days finally lift. For once, the silence in the room didn't make her feel small. It made her feel seen. Alden stepped back, letting the family sit in their reckoning. The sunlight streamed through the tall windows, spilling across the floor like liquid gold. It touched Maya's face, her uniform, the quiet dignity that never wavered. Ethan sat back down heavily, his voice breaking the silence. "Father always said truth can't be bought," he muttered. Clara looked at Maya again. "We were wrong," she said softly, the words tasting unfamiliar, but necessary. Mrs. Whitmore nodded faintly, her eyes glistening. "Your honesty, it shamed us all." Maya simply bowed her head, her voice gentle but firm. It wasn't about shame. It was about doing what was right. Alden smiled faintly. "And that," he said, "is worth more than any fortune." The meeting dissolved slowly, the weight of realization lingering in the air. Guests began to leave, the heirs retreating in silence, their reflections distorted in the polished marble they had once thought would always shine for them. Maya remained still, standing where the light met the floor. She felt it, not as triumph but as peace. The truth had been spoken, and with it, dignity restored. When she finally turned to leave, the servants stepped aside without being told. Their eyes followed her, not out of pity but out of respect. The woman they once ignored now walked past them as an equal. The golden afternoon light followed her through the corridors, brushing against her shoulders like a gentle blessing. Each step echoed softly, her presence calm and proud. She passed the portraits of the Lawrence family, stern faces frozen in oil and gold frames, and for the first time it didn't matter that her face would never hang among them. Her worth didn't need walls or portraits. It lived quietly in truth. As she reached the doorway, Alden's voice called after her, "Miss Maya." She turned slightly. "You did what many would not. You honored his memory." Maya smiled faintly. "I only told the truth, sir. That's all I ever had." He nodded with quiet admiration. "Sometimes," he said, "that's the rarest thing in a house like this." She walked on, out into the sunlight. The air outside was warm and clear, carrying the scent of jasmine and earth. The mansion behind her glimmered faintly, still beautiful, but no longer powerful. The truth had stripped it bare and made it human again. The light fell gently across her face as she crossed the courtyard, and for the first time in a long while, she lifted her chin fully to meet it. There was no shame in her, no fear, only quiet strength, shining like gold that needed no polish. And perhaps that was what Mr. Lawrence had always known. That character, not wealth, defined legacy. That afternoon, as the light faded, her reflection glimmered in the glass door one last time, poised, serene, and free. And as the screen turns warm and golden, the voice of the storyteller returns, soft but certain. Sometimes the ones who serve with quiet grace are the ones who protect what others only pretend to value, because truth doesn't bow to money or pride. It simply waits for the brave to find it. A brief pause follows, gentle as the close of a heartbeat. If this story touched you, take a moment to subscribe and leave a like. Every act of kindness helps these stories find those who need them most.